So what exactly is kamut, and what are we supposed to do with it? Today, I want to talk all about kamut, this very interesting ancient grain. Hi, sweet friends. I'm Mary, and welcome to Mary's Nest, where I teach traditional cooking skills for making nutrient-dense foods like bone broth, ferments, sourdough, and more. So if you enjoy learning about those things, consider subscribing to my channel, and don't forget to click on the little notification bell below. That'll let you know every time I upload a new video. In a previous video, I talked to you about all the different types of wheat that I use in my kitchen, and many of them are ancient grains. I discussed einkorn and emmer and spelt, and how farro fits into all of those categories and what exactly farro is, and so on and so forth. And I'll be sure to link to that video in case you didn't get a chance to see it and you're interested in learning about the ancient grains that I use in my kitchen, as well as the modern wheats that I talk about. But one grain that I use that I didn't mention was kamut. And what exactly is kamut? It's also an ancient grain. Of the ancient grains, einkorn and emmer and spelt, the one that we're going to focus on today that is related to kamut is emmer. And you may also know emmer as farro. Now, as I discussed in that previous video, einkorn, emmer, and spelt are often, depending what country you live in, referred to in general as farro. It'll just have small farro, medium farro, and big farro. And the thing about the medium farro, which is emmer, what we call emmer here in the United States, emmer is an ancient grain, and scientists believe that kamut is related to emmer. Well, how is it related? Well, emmer, as this is an ancient grain, it goes back very far. And scientists believe that from emmer, we eventually got what's known as durum wheat. You may have heard of durum wheat being used to make pasta. It's a wonderful wheat for making pasta. Durum semolina is another term you may also hear. Semolina being the middlings that are a byproduct of when durum wheat is milled, and it's often an ingredient used in making the dough for pasta. So how does kamut fit into this? Well, you had emmer, and then scientists believe that maybe durum somehow was a product of, maybe emmer was in essence the parent and durum was maybe the child. And eventually, scientists believe that durum wheat was bred with other wheats, and then that's what created kamut. So kamut is in that family of ancient grains, and it's wonderfully high in protein, which is somewhat of a trait amongst all of the ancient grains. And you can grind this up. You can do various things with it. You can soak it, and you can sprout it, and then dry it and grind it and make a sprouted kamut flour, or you can simply take kamut as is and grind it and make kamut flour. You have various options. You can also soak this and you can cook it and eat it as a grain. You can soak it and, as I said earlier, sprout it, and instead of drying it and making a flour out of it, you can soak it and sprout it and cook it as a grain and eat it. Now, you may also hear this referred to as Khorasan wheat, and I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. And Khorasan wheat was basically almost lost to history. But then it was rediscovered, and farmers up in Montana here in the United States, the state of Montana, decided to start growing it. And they gave it the name kamut, and that's kind of a registered trademark now, which means that it's definitely from the original Khorasan wheat, and not a hybrid or genetically modified or anything like that. It's actually from the original ancient grain. And so now it's grown not only in Montana, but I believe possibly in colder areas of Canada as well. And it's becoming more popular to be able to buy and to use to make, as I said, you can make flour out of it and bake with it, or you can eat it as a grain. Now I just pulled up my iPad here because I want to share with you about Kamut and how it fits in terms of the chromosomal makeup of each of these ancient wheats. You may have heard einkorn referred to as a diploid, and that refers to how many chromosomes that it has. And then Kamut and Emmer are tetraploids, so they've got a little more chromosomes than the einkorn. And Kamut does have gluten in it, but like Emmer and like einkorn, they're not really high in gluten. So when you bake with them by themselves, you don't get a high rise. You get the least rise with einkorn, and then Emmer, and which not many people bake with Emmer much. It's usually eaten as a grain, and when it's sold as a grain, you may often see it referred to as farro. And a lot of people don't just bake with Kamut just on its own, because you may not get that high rise from using Kamut. However, Kamut is very rich in nutrients like einkorn. And so it's wonderful to add in with some other flours. That way you get a better rise, but a little, better flours like spelt, or which we'll talk about in a minute, or the more modern flours, your whole wheats, whether it's red whole wheat or white whole wheat. And Kamut is very high in protein and is very high in nutrients, including minerals like manganese, and often minerals that we may be a little low on in terms of our general food supply that we're eating from. So it's a wonderful addition to add to your baked goods, to grind this into flour or buy it already ground as flour and add it to other flours to increase the nutritional benefit of the bread that you're making. And getting back to spelt for a minute, spelt is a hexaploid. So we've got our diploid, our tetraploid, and our hexaploid. And so spelt is a little, younger on the ancient grain timeline. And spelt, you can often, I love baking with spelt, and you can often bake with spelt and make 100% spelt bread. I mean, it's not going to have the same rise as your modern wheats or your whole wheats or your modern day whole wheats or even your all-purpose or your bread flours that have had the germ and the bran removed. But you can get a fairly nice loaf of bread. And I made a whole spelt bread recently, a sourdough version, and I'll link to that in the iCards if you want to see how that came out. However, if you want to add Kamut into your flours, you can add them to a spelt or to one of the modern day whole wheats, and it should do quite well. And I'm just looking at some information here that's very interesting, and it's sharing how Kamut is very high in B vitamins. So that's good, because B vitamins are your water-soluble vitamins that you pretty much lose every day and need to keep replenishing. So adding Kamut into our diets is helpful in terms of replenishing our B vitamins. And this is interesting. It's 15% protein, so it's high in protein. It's 2% fat, and it's 70% carbohydrates. So that's and 11% water. That's interesting. But as you can see, it's high in protein, as you often find with the ancient grains. So it's definitely worth experimenting with this. As I said, it does contain gluten, so it's not for those, who are on a gluten-free diet, but that it does contain gluten helps, to be able to use it as a bread flour. Just combining it with some of your modern wheats or even spelt will help you get a little better rise when you bake with it. And the nice thing about adding Kamut to your breads, or even just enjoying it as a grain cooked as a side dish, it has a very nutty flavor. Almost, I find it to be almost like a little bit of a sweet nutty flavor. And I think that adding that to whole grain breads imparts a lovely flavor. So I hope you'll give kamut a try and experiment baking with it or even cooking it as a grain. And if you'd like to learn more about traditional cooking, be sure to subscribe to my channel and then click on this video over here where I show you how to make that sourdough spelt bread that I talked about earlier. And I'll see you over there in my Texas Hill Country Kitchen. Love and God bless.